guys, this is Stephen at the Flat Earth Continuum. This video is going to be about fisheye lenses. It's going to be about distortions at the horizon and atmospheric magnification and stuff. There's quite a lot of information which is key to flat Earth. People will dismiss really casually and out of hand things because they don't see how they could work on a flat plane because they've never been shown, and when they are shown, they understand how simple it actually is. Very, very simple ideas translate into very, very simple experiments which show you the truth. And so that's really what this video is going to focus on. It's going to focus on what I regard as being the number one contributory factor to why a lot of people think that they've seen curvature, and that would obviously be fisheye lenses. So we'll wander over and let's take a little look. Here's just a few different kinds of fisheye or wide angle lenses, and don't get me wrong, the great thing about these is that that you get to see quite a lot, which is great and everything, don't get me wrong, but when people send up high altitude balloons to record stuff and they take pictures of Earth and using those lenses, well, people are being convinced that the world is round, and curved. And that's the same lenses that NASA have been using the whole time. When we look at the NASA photos, we can clearly see that that's the kind of distortion that we're looking at. Here's a river, looks pretty normal, and then you analyse the pictures and you can see how much distortion is going on there. The distortion is substantial, it's not small. But this is the same thing that happens everywhere that uses these lenses, and you can see just how much distortion goes on. And yeah, it looks great and all of that other stuff, but it is fueling this deception. And it's not a ball. It's clearly not a ball. The horizon is always flat and level, no matter how high you go. The same balloon footage, you can see the convex shape, you can see the straight line, and that's from horizon to horizon. You can see just how much distortion that is. So the second most common reason that people think that they've seen the curvature is naturally aeroplanes, and so we're going to have to wander over and just take a little look at some aeroplanes and just look at the shape of the fuselage. Let's look at the windows and what's actually going on there. A typical commercial jet or passenger airliner or standard flights cruise at around 28 to 35,000 feet, which is up to about 6.6 miles of altitude, or just under 11 kilometres. But high altitude balloons can go up to 120,000 feet. That's about 12 miles or up to 37 kilometres. And one balloon named the BU-60-1 supposedly rose up as high as 32 miles before it finally popped. So what we're really getting at here is that there's high altitude balloons that go up more than twice the height of the highest commercial airline, and no matter how high we go, we don't see deviation in the horizon. It's always flat when you're not using a fisheye lens, and it leads you to the obvious question: why do so many people who have been on planes imagine that they've seen curvature? Which leads you into the fuselage, it leads you into the windows of the craft itself, which we'll go and have a look at. So what we're dealing with is curved windows, and that these windows are curved ultimately for stress factors on the fuselage. If you built square, increase the stress factors and obviously create a more unstable fuselage. And the same thing applies to the doors and other hatches on an aircraft. So despite being able to show people the obvious stuff, some people still need shaking out of their coffins a little bit. People will say stuff like, oh, the wide angle lens not wide enough, or there'll be a plethora of excuses or reasons for why why you can't see the curvature, even though people will tell you that they've seen the curvature from a plane. We'll go and take a look at this 360-degree camera, which is quite interesting. So what we're looking at here is a camera that's got 360-degree visual range. It's literally seen all the way around itself, so that's great. So at the beginning of the video you can see that the balloon is on the ground and it's rising up, and that the horizon in the distance is obviously flat. And the entire distance, all the way up to the max height, the view of the horizon remains flat. Furthermore to that it remained at eye level for the whole duration. So without a shadow of a doubt, you know, the Earth's obviously not a ball. There's other videos to show you where it looks like to rise up from a large ball next to a large plane side by side. So you can see the horizon dropping nearly instantly on the spinning round globe model. And that's what we should see from these weather balloons if Earth was a ball. So how long does it turn out that we've been thinking that the world's been a ball then? It seems like up until about the 13th to 14th centuries that we firmly believed that we were in a flat stationary plane, and then Copernicus came along in the 15th century and made this proposition, which might have led us to this fallacious conclusion about the sphericity of the world. But the conclusion wasn't any more simplistic than the geocentric. It wasn't more accurate in terms of its ability to predict anything, and it couldn't be even visually determined because people didn't have telescopes at the time. Yep, that's right, people didn't even have telescopes at the time, so measurements were taken with devices like this. So in this section here I could put in every proof in the book about how flat Kansas is, and how many states are flatter than Kansas, and how flat the water is, and how flat everything is, because everything's all super flat. But we'll just go straight on to math powerland really, and we'll go and look at photos and paintings. So this guy essentially claims to have worked for NASA, and that he's an artist and does hyper-realism and all of this other stuff, and that he's allegedly been commissioned by NASA to produce a series of images that were shown to the public and stuff, and that at some point in his career with NASA, people have taken him to the side and confided in him that the world was actually flat. From that point he's turned rebel. But if you maybe just listen to the reaction that the audience has as he presents a series of images to them, and he asks whether or not these are photos or paintings, essentially. So let's look at the reaction.
Okay, by applause, how many people think this is a painting? By applause, how many people think this is a photo? It's a painting. I did it. Okay, here, by applause. This is a bit technical here. How many people think that this is a painting? By applause. How many people, by applause, think this is a photo of toys that are painted? This is a painting of toys that are painted. Cesar Santander, European artist, high realist. How many people think this is a painting? By applause. Okay, by applause. How many people think this is a photo? Those said it's a photo, you're close. All right. Okay, by applause. How many people think this is a painting? How many think this is a photo? This is a painting. I did it. I fucking did that. Money on steroids. No, that's a fucking, I swear to God.
So the only thing that's really conclusive here is that people can be fooled pretty easily. Going through the flat earth movement, you know, you come to this realisation that it's a massive part of religion, that it's in all of the religious books, especially the Book of Enoch, that the Bible is essentially just one big flat earth textbook, really, when you're really looking at it from that angle. And some people are very spiritual, very religious, and coming at it solely from that perspective. Um, there's a lot of different angles to come at this from. Ultimately, if you're completely satisfied with the horrific system as it is, happy being your little slave self and getting through to the end of the shift and getting money in the pocket and then doing it till you die. If you're happy with that, then that's great and everything. But for those people who are really looking to do some research, we're going to look at how things work at the horizon, alleged light bending places and doing stuff. We're going to look at some atmospheric magnification. Most people think that they've debunked the flat earth because when they look at objects through a telescope, these objects look as if they appear to be missing some of the bottom. And at first glance that might seem like amazing proof that the world's a ball and that the object is indeed below the land or the water. This is something that gets a lot of people hung up on whether or not this flat earth is real. But once you find out how your eyes work on a large flat plane, or how the atmosphere itself between 2 points serves as a magnifying lens to make objects appear bigger, but not only that, it also cuts off the bottom of the objects, so it could be a sticking point for a lot of people. So we'll just go and take a little look at Rob Skiba explaining this with a little more aplomb. He does a really good job of explaining this and showing more depth. So we'll just go straight over to Rob Skiba.
Came up with another way of doing the same thing, using the sheet right here. Set the city up, a little cutout of the city, and now I've got the big magnifying glass sheet. Bring the camera right up to the lens. See, that's the normal view of the city. Now let's back up again.
The science is the same of that of a lens. Here's a simple example.
So if you're looking at Chicago here,
the atmosphere really is acting like a lens.
Yes.
Atmosphere really is acting like a lens, and this is how much of the city is missing due to the lensing effect, the magnification of the atmosphere. You're missing a good portion of the city just by pulling my iPhone back on a 3-foot long desk. That's how much I lost of the city. And as with any scientific experiment, you always try to improve upon what you did before. So I got some foam core, made a little housing for the magnifying sheet, and pasted the city on the back there. And I made it as 2 separate pieces so that I could flex it as necessary, because I think that there are different types of atmospheric conditions that would allow for more magnification versus less magnification. So in this scenario, you have more magnification, and in this one you have less. And for this one, I decided to put the Toronto skyline into my little box here. And let's try it again. Okay, we're all the way up against the glass. Now let's zoom across the lake. And wow, look at that. The lower portions start to disappear. Now let's zoom back in, get a little closer to the one that Captain Baltard was talking about here. And wow, look at this. Here's his image on the right, and here's my image on the left. Missing the lower portions of the city had nothing to do with curvature whatsoever.
Oftentimes people really get mixed up with simple ideas. They can't go over the various different kinds of globy style models simply because they can't understand how light is interacting with the environment. And looking at the underside of clouds is a perfect example of that. Clearly these clouds are lit from the bottom, and for most of the time a lot of the flat earth community had no idea what was going on. Doing some practical experiments shows you how a lot of this stuff is done. For a long time people thought that there was no explanation for this, but there obviously was. So we'll go and look at Rob Skiba explaining this more precisely, and how light is being refracted.
So when you show people the model of the sun going around in a parallel path above the circle of the Earth, they say, well, in that situation, the sun is above the clouds, and so how could it possibly illuminate the bottom of the clouds when it's doing that? So I decided to take up that challenge and see if I could figure that out based on what I had learned in my previous experiments. And so I got one of these stick 'em up LED lights. You know, you kind of push the button, it's got 3 little LED lights inside. And I taped it up so only one of the LED lights is showing, and stuck it on a box and put it on the table with my trusty plastic lens set up here. And I took my stand that I was using for the sun and moon and just set it up right here on top of these little Tupperware things. And I was thinking, okay, so let's just say the bottom of this little stand here represents the bottom of the clouds. And so as you can see here, the light is way above, it's well above what would be the bottom of the clouds in this example. So let's see what happens. I turned off the lights and set my iPhone to record, and I'm showing myself here recording all of this with another camera, and I pulled the light back on the table, and watch what happens here. Ooh, check it out. There's that refraction taking place again. It's got the light. It made the sun set, first of all, below the horizon in this case. And let's just show, this is just the iPhone view. I'm going to bring the cloud in here, and the platform represents the bottom of the clouds. So the sun's going down, and whoop, there it is. The bottom of the clouds illuminated by a light source that's well above the clouds, moving parallel over a flat surface. So apparently it's possible for the sun to illuminate the bottom of the clouds even on the flat Earth model.
So by now you'll be probably wondering, how does the sun act this way if it's so big? And it's because it's more like a local light source, and it's obviously nowhere near as big as we're told. The sun rays don't travel forever. Like any light that we have here on Earth, it's only got a finite amount of distance that it can travel. To prove that the sun's a local light source, take a look at this guy's video where he's using his torch as the sun, and the piece of cardboard is more or less the clouds, which he's poked holes in. When he's poked the holes into the clouds, you get to see how the sun's rays splay out from through the clouds and reach the earth below. Let's listen to him explaining this.
Cloud is in view, and I want you to be able to see the cloud, which is my cardboard with the holes cut out of it. That way I could line up the rays, but as you can see, when I moved up a little bit off the floor and put the light even closer, the rays really splayed out. So I just wanted you to see that. Okay, so there you go. There's hard evidence that when the light source is close to the clouds, the light will diverge. The dispersion pattern you can see when I was outside, the dispersion pattern remained the same, meaning the 5 holes that I had that stayed exactly the same, and that's a faraway light source. But when the light source was close, they splay out. That definitely supports the flat Earth model of a small, close sun.
So this doesn't even really begin to scratch the surface in how much people have been lied to. It presents a couple of little points, a couple of little truths, and breaks down a couple of those barriers for people. There are so many people out there with great content that are doing real world experiments. They're testing this stuff, reproducing it, and you can see these effects in the real world. Make sure that you're not being deceived. Double check, triple check, quadruple check. Back it up and verify with other members of the community that you trust, or friends, family, whatever it happens to be. There are plenty of snakes in the grass, and there are plenty of wolves in the hills. Anybody that's pushing truth is doing a good thing, presumably. Got to give people the support that they've earned. Throw your trust where you find it to be appropriate. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Again, if this has piqued your interest, go and research as much as possible. I'll be putting out more content. Don't just rest on your laurels or anything. Don't sit back and wait for other people to do the work. That's the entire point. You can make the difference. You've got to make the difference. If everybody was able to stand up, if everybody was able to sing all at the same time, that's a world to fight for, if there's a world to fight for at all. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.